Welcome out to the timber frame build today. Let's go down in the basement and check out the foundations. Let's go. Well, let's head on down. We're putting sleeves on the walls. We got the sleeves in place for the windows and stuff, and I want to show you some of the details with the rebar. Let's head down the steps together. All right, the first place we're walking into here is this window well. This is going to be a window well that actually gets poured with the foundation. So it's about 5 feet off the house, and it's going to let great light into the house. Well, you can see we've got these forms in place. These here are going to be set in the wall, and they're the exact size of the Anderson E-Series windows that we're using on the house. We got 2 of these. This one's actually going to let light into the elevator shaft, so when you come down that elevator, it's not a dark hole. This one here is going to be the egress for a potential bedroom. So you could crawl out this, climb up the ladder, and get out in the case of emergency. The other thing we're doing today is we're actually putting the sleeves on the foundation, and we're marking those locations for the foundation guys. So when they come to set the walls, they know exactly where they need to go. Well, let's head down to the other end and I'll show you some more stuff. As we walk down here, you know, we can see we've got the rebar in place. We built these cages specific for point load areas where there's going to be beams that set. This is a timber frame house, so we got several different locations that there's going to be posts coming down with point load. So you can see this one over here is a bigger cage. This is going to be where a timber sets right on top of this. So it's just reinforcement for the concrete, making that structure nice and strong to hold those timbers. Down here, we've got footers poured here where there's going to be bearing walls and posts in the floor. So there's also some timbers that set in the middle of the house, and those will set on a concrete post, but they come down and transfer that load right on this solid footer. The footers on this house are 10 inches thick, and they're all reinforced with rebar as well. This here is a form that we made for the door for the safe room. So you can see this is going to stand up here. We actually didn't make this out of pressure treated lumber because this one will unscrew it and take this back out of place, and we'll slide that safe room door right in this location, bolt it right to the concrete. So we got that ready to go. You can also see we got footers poured around this safe room here. So we got reinforcement steel in all this. It's going to have concrete walls all the way around me. We're actually going to pour a cap on top of this. So we'll actually run some rebar up and tie it into that cap as well. Over here is our sump pump pit. So we got 2 sump pumps and we got a chopper pump. This is for the sanitary water that comes from the bathroom in the basement. All that'll be plumbed over to this. These need to get set upright, and you see there's the inlet for that. This will be a sealed pit here with pipes coming out and a chopper pump inside there that will pump the gray water up and out. Well, one thing I definitely wanted to show you today is how we do the forms for the footers. So this product right here is called Proform, and what it is it's a PVC material that's structurally strong that they can pour concrete up against. And what they do is they pour concrete around the inside where there's no slits in it, but on the outside there's slits that let water in. So all the way around this foundation, there's 2 rows of this, one on the outside, one on the inside, and any groundwater will go right into those and drain all the way around because they're all tied together to our sump pump pit. These save a lot of time, and they're really great to use for drainage. So they come with these fittings that they slide together, snap together. They can actually pop these things right together to make connections, straight connections. And you can see here, they can also make corners, inside corners, all that kind of thing. Well, what we got going on today is we got to put the sleeves on the walls and mark those. So I've already done the sleeves, but I'm going to show you the process and what I do to mark those on the foundation so that the foundation guys know exactly where they need to be. So come over and look at the drawings with me, and then let's walk around and look at some of the sleeves that we got in place and what those sleeves are for. So what we do is we actually meet with the plumbers and electricians and everybody that needs a sleeve in the wall, and we make all these notations on the plans of exactly where the sleeves go. So we mark on the plans where the sleeves go, and then we actually mark on the sleeve itself the height that it goes from the top of the wall. So you can see here, we've got one for sanitary. Back here where our sump pits go and our chopper pump goes, we got one for the stormwater going out and the sanitary water going out and the actual water coming in. So let's go over to the foundation and I'll show you what we do to communicate that well to all the trades. So over here, you can see we actually write on it what it's for. This one says sump pump water. It says 15 inches down to the top of the pipe from the top of the wall. So when the foundation guys come, they can set a tie in the wall and hang this exactly where it needs to go. They'll reference this paint line on the floor, and they'll reference the height, and they'll hang it exactly where it needs to go for us. So we got one for the sump pump water, we got one for the sanitary water that will come out of the chopper pit, and we actually have one here, and this is for the actual water line that's coming into the house. So what we do to build these is we take two fittings and a short piece of pipe. And the cool thing is that the plumbers, they can actually glue into this with their pipe and continue on into the house. And then you can glue into this side and take it outside. So we'll actually bring a water line through this. It's going to be a 2-inch water line, but we can put a pipe on this and a Fernco, clamp that down and make this a watertight connection. So we never have to worry about groundwater leaching in there. Well, those are just a few things that I wanted to talk about at this stage in the project. Next time, let's come out together and we'll look at the foundation walls and show you some of the details with that. So thanks a lot for coming out today. We'll catch you later. Welcome out this morning. We got to get some of these hold downs in. These are Simpson hold down ties. These go down into the concrete forms. They sit about right here and they get embedded into the forms. And so once we build, we're going to fasten these to the stud walls on the outside of the building. We're using SIP panels on this house, but inside of those SIP panels, there's going to be 2x6s that these can attach to. All these nails will be filled with galvanized nails, and these will be nice and solid to hold this thing to the foundation. We got these to put on, and we also have these here that need to be actually embedded into the concrete. So when the concrete's still wet, these are going to get stuck down into the concrete about this deep, and then they will tie into our bottom plates, and they will actually be held in with some taller brackets, and we'll show you those after we get these in. But we're going to get these set, and we're going to get these other ones set and ready to go this morning. So let's walk over to the house together, and I'll show you what we got going on. All right, we're going to head over and step onto the forms. I'm going to show you the process to get one of these embedded in the concrete before we pour this morning. All right, so what we're going to do this morning is we're going to get this embedded in the concrete before we pour. So these have to be set in the concrete, and then they'll pour up to them. Well, they have to be at a certain height. So we got to get these in the concrete, embedded exactly at this height so that this will come up straight and the bottom piece will actually go into the concrete. Well, Simpson makes these awesome bracket holders. So these orange things here will get actually fastened to the side of the forms, and then these will lock into it so it'll be held perfectly while they pour. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure over our 3 inches, because that's where the placement of this one's going to go. We're going to mark that right here on the wall. And then we're going to take our bracket, and I'm using the drill bit on this. We can drill right into the forms to hold this thing in place. So once we have those holes drilled, set my drill down so it doesn't fall into there. I got these are self-tapping screws, but since the forms were so thick and heavy duty, they weren't going in. So what we got going on is we'll just set this on there. And then we can fasten that right down on there. Okay, now that we got our bracket secured on here, we can take the actual hold down, and they have a line right on the hold down that says exactly where it needs to go according to the height of this bracket. So we can go ahead and slide that in there, line up that top line, and then this second half of this piece just goes and pushes right in there. So it makes a nice and solid hold. It's got the proper angle there at the bottom, so when the concrete comes around here, it's poured on there perfectly. All right, well, we got about 12 more of these things to put on today, and we're gonna go around, we're gonna get all the rest of those on there. The last thing though, before I leave this spot, is I wanted to talk about these sleeves. So the other day when we were out here, we were talking about the sleeves and getting those sleeves in the wall. Well, you see these forms, this is gonna be an 8-inch concrete wall, but each one of those sleeves is placed in this wall at a specific spot. So they've already got these sleeves in here. I'll show you these sleeves and get you a picture of what we actually did there. But we got all these sleeves in, ready to go. So when we pour the concrete goes around them and that sleeve's in the proper spot. So we're actually gonna, as we go around, we'll check each one of those and make sure those got put in the right exact spot. All right, we're gonna go around and finish up these brackets, and then we'll catch back up in a minute or two, and we'll go over a few more details with the forms. All right, well, let's walk up to the house, and I'm gonna show you a few other details with the forms before we pour today. We'll take a peek down in them, see the rebar and how that's all put together. Let's walk up here to the garage. So the way these forms are made is they can put these boards on the outside. These stiffen them, as also allows them to walk on the outside when they're pouring, so they can walk along the outside. You can see we got our brackets in here. We got all those hold downs in place, ready to go. But if we look down here, we also have different things going on here with these brackets. These are actually going to be the brackets that stand off to hold the concrete back for our garage doors. So this is a garage wall. This is going to be a garage door right here. It's going to be an 18-foot wide garage door. But they put these in because the concrete will actually get poured up against it, and it will be lower right where the garage door goes. So they can drop that concrete. We can pour that concrete slab for the garage out to the outside edge and make that look really nice where that goes. So that's why they got those in. You can see there's string lines on here. These are to straighten these walls so that when they pour, they're nice and straight. So they'll go along, they'll put these string lines on, and then they can brace it at each section. So the string lines are on, but they're not braced yet at this point. So they'll come along and they'll brace this wall and push it in or out depending on what that string line shows. Well, that's the garage wall. Let's walk over to the basement wall and I'll show you a couple things there. So like I said in one of the other videos we were shooting, these are actually 10-foot basement walls. So when I come down here, you can see, you know, I'm 6'5". These things tower above me. Right behind me here is the window well. So this will all get filled up with dirt, but on the inside will be light that can come down into the basement. So these forms are aluminum forms. They lock together. They have all these pins in place here. They lock them together. They come in all these different sizes and sections that they can make the exact length of the wall that we need. So they got this one ready to go. They got their walk bar put in here for stability and so they can walk around it. And they actually got the string line on above me as well there. So let's take a look over here. We can actually look down in the wall and I'll show you the rebar and what's going on there. we're up here on the wall now, and you can see down in here, you can see the rebar that's in place. We got a series of different rebar widths and specifications that we had to do for this project. These ties here are actually what holds the concrete forms together. So you can see these steel ties, they serve a couple of purposes. They hold the forms together, and they actually hold this rebar on it at the certain spot. So we got those ties in place, we got the rebar attached to those ties. We also have in this spot here, we have a point load for one of the timbers. So this is a steel rebar cage that we built down there that adds structural strength to this certain area of concrete. Well, back behind me, we actually have one of our sleeves that I was talking about earlier. So this sleeve here is actually for the water coming into the pool. We got that in place. That'll come into the pool mechanical room behind me here, because that's right where I'm standing is the pool mechanical room. So that water line will service that and bring that water right in. Well, I'm glad you came out today. We got one more video that we want to shoot that goes with the foundation. We'll shoot that after the concrete is poured, and we'll show you the details there. But until then, thanks for coming out. All right, well, welcome out to the timber frame. This is the last of the 3rd days that we're showing the stuff going on with the foundation. The foundation is actually done and complete. I'll go through some details with that. But before we get into that, just know that we're also putting another video out that has all of our drone footage and some cool shots from the foundation. So that won't be as much explaining, but it'll just be some video shots. So make sure to check that out. We got a link below that you can find that for that video. Well, let's get into it today on info and details that we have going on with our foundation. So behind me, we got the foundation. You can see that it is complete. And I'm gonna hop down in here and I'm gonna talk about a few things with the garage, and then we're gonna go over to the house, and we'll go down in the basement of the house and show a few things there. So if you remember on our last video, we got all these hold downs in. So you can see how those work. Those get embedded in the concrete at a certain point. They come up, and then our framing will actually set right here, and these will get folded back against the house, and we'll put all these nails in, and that will be to secure these corners. We also have a few other places that we put them in at specific locations, so that will grab the studs there and make sure that's a nice solid connection. Well, you can also see we got all our anchor bolts in, so we put those in all the way around. On top of this concrete wall, there's going to be our 2x6 that's going to sit on here, and it's going to get bolted down to these. There's a gasket that goes underneath it that seals it between the concrete and the 2x, but that's going to go right here. So I think that we talked about how we were notching these areas down in the last video, but you can see this is the top of the concrete wall. And we actually notched this section down because we're going to pour the concrete out right here. So the concrete floor is going to sit 4 inches below here. So if any water gets on the floor of the garage and runs up against the edge, it's not getting into the drywall or the finished materials. So that's going to sit down about 4 inches, but we're going to pour that floor up about 5 inches or 6 inches on this edge, whatever this distance is here. That way we got a nice thick curb there on the outside, nice and strong, doesn't crack along here or anything like that. On the inside of the garage, if you swing around here, you can see that we actually put a brick ledge on the inside. So these are 8-inch thick concrete walls, but what we do is we take 2 inches of foam and put it inside the forms before we pour, so that makes this top 6 inches wide. Well, the reason that we do that is because when we set that 2x6 on top of here, that's exactly the right width to make this perfectly flush out on the outside and on the inside. So on the inside of the room, that 2x6 will sit right here, and that wall will be perfect with it. Otherwise, if the wall got poured at 8 inches all the way, it'd be clear out here and you'd have a 2-inch lip of concrete there. So That's just a nice feature that we put on here. It takes a little extra work to do that brick ledge, but in the end you can't get the results unless you do that. You can also see inside here the concrete forms. These are the way they tie their forms together. So the forms sit in here, they slip these ties between the two forms, and they put like a bolt in here and wedges that hold these in place. So this is just the 4-foot garage wall. Got the footers down there. If you look down here, we got our sleeve in here. So this is where the sleeve actually is. But what happens is when they pour the concrete, it actually fills that sleeve a little bit. So there's a little bit of concrete here. So when the guys come to do the floor and do the drains inside there, they just have to take their hammer and they pound out this tie and they pound out a little concrete there, and that concrete comes right out of that sleeve, and then they don't have to core a hole. Well, that's the info on the garage. Let's head over and we're going to crawl down in the basement and we're going to go through some of the details over there. So let's head over that way. All right, well, we're over here on this side, and I wanted to show you one detail before we crawl down into the basement, and that is this waterproofing membrane on the side. So this product is actually sprayed on, and it's our damp proofing or waterproofing from the outside moisture that sits up against the foundation. So you can see some areas are sprayed, some areas are not, and the reason we do this is because we don't spray areas that have a slab foundation in it. So the floor in here is actually going to get poured up to here. This won't be a crawl space or a basement or anything, but over on this side there is a basement, and this area we don't want any water to soak into that concrete or to make that concrete damp. The other detail that we'll be doing here is we're going to put foam on the outside. So we'll put foam right up against this waterproofing, and that'll be our thermal break between the ground temperature and the temperature of the concrete to keep that concrete warmer, to keep it off that 55-degree temperature of the ground. All right, well, let's crawl down in the basement and I'll show you some details there. All right, well, welcome down into the basement. Let's go through a few details down here that we put into these concrete walls to make this foundation work well for us. So you can see here, these frames are already put in. These are for the windows. We talked about these earlier, how we build these specific for the windows that we're using. Well, you can see these are treated, so we're gonna just take out all this bracing in here and leave this outside 2x8. And we leave that out there because that fits the window perfectly that we're going to put in there. So those two are for windows. Where I'm standing here, this is going to be the elevator shaft. So the foundation footers come all the way around there, so we have a nice solid bottom to that shaft. We put a drain in there, so any water, like when we're building, that runs off can go down there. We're actually going to come down here and we're going to pour our concrete floor for the basement about right in this range, and that concrete floor is going to stand up about 6 inches above this footer, and that'll get this pit just at the right depth for us. If we walk over here, we can see we have these pilasters put in. These are the supports for our steel beams. So on this house, the floor joists are going to actually run this way. They're floor trusses, and they're already engineered and they're already here on site, but they're all going to run this way. So that means that we have to have a steel beam in here to catch that span, to break up that span so that we don't have too long of spans on those floor trusses. Well, these are for that. The steel beam will actually sit right up here on top. We got one here, we got one over here, and over here you can actually see another one of these sleeves in the walls. So you know how I talked about there was concrete in those sleeves? Well, this concrete here, if you just kind of wiggle it out, these concrete pieces come out of there, and then that sleeve is ready to go for the pipes that they want to stick in there to be able to hook in. That one I think is actually for the water going into the pool room. So let's walk down here. I'm going to show you the safe room. We got this ready to go. So this here frame that we put in this door is just regular SPF lumber. And the reason we do that is because this whole thing is going to come out of there. So we're going to take this whole frame out, and it's just going to have a concrete edge here And then that door that we put in there actually bolts right to the concrete, has another piece that comes from the backside, and then we can bolt that right into the sides. So that door is already set up for that. If you look around the top, you can see the rebar sticking up out of the top. We're actually going to take that rebar and bend it over, and then we'll pour that right into the slab that goes on top of that room. So it really encapsulates that room with concrete and makes it a really safe room, and that rebar is part of that process there. So you can look in there, but that's all ready to go. To condition that space, we're actually going to come in the backside and core a hole through the wall, and then we can put our conditioning unit on the wall in there for the air and the moisture. Back here we have our sump pumps. Last time we were out here, these things were just floating, but we got those encapsulated in stone now. Those are set to the right height above the floor, so when we pour that floor, it's nice and flush with the top of those. Well, thanks for coming out and checking out the foundation with us. We're going to keep putting videos out on this build. We want to show the entire process from start to finish so that you guys can see what all goes into building a new house. The next things we're going to be doing is putting the radiant down here in the floor. We're going to put foam in, get that plumbing in the floor. So we're going to take some videos of doing that. But we're so glad you came out. Make sure you check out the video that we're putting out for the drone footage and some of the aerial shots that we took while we put this foundation in. We're going to keep those videos separate so that you can watch those as well as watching the one that's got more talking. But we're so thankful that you came out today. Have a good one, and we'll catch you later.